I worked for an IT company, and every building that we went into that had a network, they all acted differently. We could set them up the same way, but these printers didn't like this, and we had to set them up a different way. These printers worked just fine at this other place, set up exactly the same way, and, it was just weird. Like, it was almost like the network decided, "I don't like that, you gotta set it up a different way," you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it gets complicated. And we're recording, by the way.
Right.
So what Chris and I were talking about is or I was talking about, if you can barely see it over here, there's this other monitor, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So it it was blacked out before, and now it decided that it's gonna come on.
In fact,
And
while you were gone, it went off for about 2 seconds and came back on.
did
Yeah.
oh boy. Yeah, now that we have all these, everything's called smart whatever, smart TV, smart monitor, it's probably even worse than it was before.
Well, I've
But
learned that the smarter products get, sometimes they get mean.
yeah. Yeah. It definitely makes them a little more complicated because you don't, you know, fully understand how or why the device does what it does. But
That's right.
um yeah, so we I think left off this time at what, 3 hours in Rich Dad Poor Dad is where we are
That's
now.
where we're up to now. That's right.
Yeah, so good ways. And I want to say that audiobook version goes to 6 hours, maybe something like that. So we should be around halfway at least through. Um, and yeah, still no, as you can see, there's still no like golden ticket per se.
That's right.
So, and I think we've talked about this before, and you're probably seeing by now that that's pretty intentional. All he's really trying to do is switch your mindset from mindset A to mindset B
Right.
is really what he's trying to do. And the other, everybody, including me, at some point feels like they would like to hear what they can do to make, $1 million or whatever. And the truth of the matter is, nobody can ever tell you with 100% certainty what the next, uh, whether it be a stock choice or whatever, nobody knows with 100% certainty what's going to be the next, uh, thing that returns somebody 1,000%.
Sure.
It's really just making your best educated guess, unless you start your own business or you buy another business from somebody else that's already cash flowing.
Well,
But
it's, like we talked about before we started recording, he mentions several times in this book that the stock market is emotionally driven,
mhm.
and that honestly, and I don't believe anybody can do this. There may be some that are better than others, but, if you can figure out what the emotions of the investors are gonna be in the future, you could predict the stock market.
Yeah.
Um, am I wrong on that? I mean,
No, I mean, it's certainly in the short term, uh, uh, if you can pinpoint the direction of emotions, that's I feel like that's really the only way that, day traders ever make money. And I mean, the good ones and the ones with a lot of support, I'm sure use, AI t uh, assisting tools or whatever. They use some sort of computerized tool to help them analyze when there's more buyers than sellers, and when there's more sellers than buyers.
there's been a question I wanted to, this is kind of off the subject. This one, a question I wanted to ask, uh, that I don't really understand. Um, how long has, like in the stock market, shorting and that kind of thing, how long has that been a thing? Is that a recent development, or has that been something that's been available for decades?
I know it's been available for decades, but that is a good question. I'm not sure.
The only reason I ask is I understand where the profit and the wealth comes from, your normal investing in the stock market, okay? What I don't understand is, how do you make money? Where does the money come from when you short something? How do you get money because you shorted uh, a company?
how do you make money from it?
Yeah, I mean, where does the money come from? If a company fails and you predicted that it would, and you how do you get money from that? Where does the money come from?
Um, that's actually, that's actually a good question. I'm not sure if I can explain that just off the top of my
I
head, but
mean,
I'll
to
I'll
me,
try
that
to
would be
find the answer.
the ultimate example of the market just rewarding you for making the right gamble. I mean, for
Yeah.
making the right guess. I mean,
Listen to this. Shorts, it says, at least Google says, or Gemini, which is Google's AI, says short selling originated in the early 1600s with uh, Isaac Lemaire,
mhm.
credited with inventing the practice in 1609 to bet against the Dutch East India Company. So this is way older than I thought it was going to be. It became a formalized, recognized strategy in the U.S. by the 1800s, pioneered by figures like Jacob Little in the 1820s, and later gained notoriety for exacerbating the 1929 market crash.
I'm not sure that can be true. How did they figure out that they could make money like this without the internet and AI?
Yeah, well, I guess how it worked there and how it still kind of works is that somebody creates some sort of financial contract via attorney or whatever and says, "Hey, you can buy this contract saying that if this company or this investment goes down this much, then you get paid this much."
So is it kind of like stock insurance? Is that what you're buying?
uh, I'm I wouldn't call it insurance. I'd say you're just buying a financial contract that is stating that.
Okay, I get that part. I still don't understand where the money comes from.
Yeah, I got you. Well, I guess it's
Like, I know that there's millionaires. There's been millionaires created
from short selling. Yeah, I
because
don't.
because a company failed, you got rich.
Yeah,
Where'd that money come from? You know,
no, that's a good question. I
and
think.
who has to pay it?
Yeah, I think how it works, and I mean, I'm sure there's a better explanation, but just like you can make or form a financial contract for for making money if it drops, I'm sure there's also a counterparty that says, okay, well, I'm gonna form a financial contract where if it goes up, I make money. If it goes down, you make money, and you know, whichever party uh is correct is the one that gets the other person's money. That's like
Interesting.
a very overly simple explanation. Like I'm sure there's a deeper explanation for it, but that's at least
I mean,
the
because if a company
basics.
fails, the creditors want their cut too.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
they're gonna want their cut.
yeah.
Um,
Well, if a company fails, a lot of people expect a cut because you've got creditors, like you said, and then you've also got most of the time among shareholders of a company, you have one class of stock. Ooh, my ear itches. One class of stock that is what we call common shares that most people own, and then typically you have preferred shares, which are typically shares bought by earlier investors, and they're considered a little safer. Um, well, like to give an example, I know this company that has, uh, Class A share and then just regular common shares. And those Class A shares pay a lower but pretty much flat guaranteed dividend yield of like 9% a quarter. Or, I mean, it's 9% annualized. Whereas the common stock pays a dividend that can potentially grow. It's gotten up to like 15%, 16%. But in the event that the company gets in financial trouble, the owners of the preferred shares have a greater priority in like a liquidation event
mhm.
as opposed to just the common shareholders. So preferred is, a little less risk and a little less reward, whereas common shares are more risk, more
You
potential
know, if
reward.
I was a heavy investor, I'm not, but if I was, I kind of feel like I would be better at finding companies that would fail than I would that would succeed, and I
Yeah.
think I would probably make more money shorting than I did, just the what did you call it? The
Um, Common stock.
common stock.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, some people are that way, but at the same time, many people have argued that short selling shouldn't even be legal, and they do have, in
I
my
mean, because
opinion.
seriously, I'm good at looking at stuff and going, "No, no, 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 that's not gonna work."
Yeah. No, I hear you. But the people that claim that it should be illegal also have a valid point, in my opinion, because, like you stated earlier, you basically have a bunch of people betting on a company failing, which to me is a problem. I mean, you don't, if everybody
And let me ask
decided.
you this as well. What if a group of people and you tell me if you can see that this situation that I'm about to describe could be a possibility. What if somebody that's in a position to affect the outcome, and I'm talking about they can do things that ensures that a company fails? Like they have some kind of uh control over a certain market or something, and they can ensure that this company fails and they bet against it.
Ask the ask the first part of that question again.
Like if a company is big enough to have or connected enough to affect the outcome of a certain company. Like they can make decisions that make it hard on this company to
Mhm.
succeed. Well, if I can do those things that make it hard on this company to succeed and I bet against them, you know what I mean? And I short them, I've insured myself making money, right?
Um, I mean that if there's more shorts.
Like if there's a company, say, uh, selling dining room chairs, okay?
Mhm.
And I know that they've invested a lot of money. They're a new company. Everybody's excited about them. And I go to all the retailers and say, "Hey, look, I'll give you my chairs $5 cheaper than they're selling theirs if you just won't buy theirs." And then I go short the company. Uh, I mean, is that realistically a possibility?
No, I mean, you're not completely off base there. A lot of the time, in my experience,
I mean,
short.
it'd be a type of insider trading, kind of. You know what I
Well,
mean?
I don't. I don't know of an exact example like that one that a short seller has done. But what I do know that they will do frequently is they'll build a short position and then they'll somehow get somebody to put out a news story about how some company's in impending doom, or they'll find ways to put out news stories to scare investors out of a certain investment. That's typically how short sellers do these things, in my opinion, is they build fear among investors, therefore convincing investors to sell the investment
That's
because.
another thing that I want to mention. Not only could they make a deal like that behind the scenes, but they could also get in front of a camera and really talk down the company and scare investors into not investing with them to further ensure that their short would succeed. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mhm. Yeah, they can definitely do their best to,
I mean, because
um
people talk about a president alone affecting the market by things that he says in front of the camera. So you know that people who are supposedly smart about investing, if they say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, you better be careful, don't invest in that company," a lot of people are going to listen to them and not
Oh,
and
yeah.
not do it.
Yeah. No, it happens for sure. Like you said, the president can move the market, the Federal Reserve can move the market, but ultimately, you know, it it comes down to, like I said earlier, it always comes down to, if there's more sellers than buyers, it goes down. If there's more buyers than sellers, it goes up. So yeah, if you can convince everybody to be afraid, then it's going to go down. I mean, if you convince everybody to be afraid and they choose to sell off their position.
Now, obviously, that would be an unethical thing to do, but I feel like people who like for instance, if I'm not saying he ever did this or ever would, but if Warren Buffett got up and really talked down a stock, people would listen to him. And if he did it for the reason of that he just didn't like this company, he was mad at him or something, it would be a kind of an unethical thing to do, but he could do it.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you'd be surprised. Like he definitely people listen to him, and he has some sway, but you wouldn't believe, or maybe you would, but I used to it used to surprise me the amount of like pride and narcissism and among just regular people that think that they know better than somebody that's been investing for 50 years. But there's a lot of people
When
will
he's a
hear,
billionaire and you're not.
yeah,
Yeah.
but a lot of people will defend themselves by saying, well, he's old and out of touch, and maybe ever so often that's true, but for the most part, yeah, he's old. I get what you're saying. He's from another time, but he's seen a lot of these same things, even if it's not with the particular investment that you're thinking about. He's seen these things play out with other investments over and over and over again.
Mhm.
So,
When you get to the level of and I really think a lot of his major success, when you get to the level and again, I'm not saying everybody could ever get there, but you could if you were disciplined. When you get to the level of buying and selling companies, I mean, his his portfolio now is buying and selling entire companies.
hmm yep,
That's when the overnight success can really happen for you because if you buy a successful company, they're like, "Yeah, I'll take that 100,000,000 you're offering," and then he makes 1,000,000,000 off of it. I mean,
hmm
how easy was that? All he had to do, it was a machine that he bought and he just let it keep running, you know?
yeah. And now that oh, I hope I didn't lose my train of thought here. I was gonna say, now that you bring that up, what was, dang, what was I about to say?
Talking about investing and,
Yeah,
being disciplined
Warren Buffett buying large companies was leading me to something.
and this is something that
Um,
we also talked about off camera a minute ago about some of the things that are what I kinda have gained so far in the book is that to me, even though I'm not really sure that he's talked about it a whole lot, he's roundabout talked about it, but he hasn't really brought this point out. To me, the main point of the book is being disciplined and
mhm.
understanding delayed gratification. I know look, I'm not saying that I have been, uh, a rock in my discipline throughout my life.
Oh, we all,
I would be a millionaire
yeah,
today if I was. I kinda feel like if people can learn not to be enamored with liabilities, because everybody wants them.
mhm.
If people can be learn to be not enamored with, liabilities and really search for the assets, their entire life can change. Their entire lifestyle can change.
Yeah, one thing that I did personally, and I'm not saying everybody has to do this all the time because you have a lot of people that legitimately enjoy cars, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what helped me personally, and the reason why I'm still driving my old truck is I, after doing, the amount of study that I've done on the topic of investment and economics, I had to remind myself and convince myself, hey, your vehicle is like a number 2 pencil or a rule. It's a tool. It's a tool to get from point A to point B. Um, and
Doesn't have to be $100 fountain pen.
yeah,
A number 2 pencil
yeah,
still writes.
yep. Uh, so the more reliable, the longer lasting, and so on, the better your personal financial health is going to be. The longer that you can keep a vehicle, but I mean, like I said, that's why car companies and so many other companies are so good at getting you to buy liabilities is because they create some
Sure.
pretty nice liabilities that everybody wants to have.
But some of the things that, like we talked about earlier, and it's funny how different aspects of life can be transferred even to the monetary world. You know how people have always said, for them and a lot of other people, the joy of getting to a destination ended up being uh, more memorable and enjoyable than the actual destination was,
Mhm.
right? Well, I think that if you can train yourself uh, to look to the future, so can a financial journey. It's not about uh, most of the time the end result. Everybody wants the end result, and they want the end result yesterday, right? But uh, the journey of becoming a disciplined person, I know it's tough. I know it's hard, but the journey of being a disciplined person can be absolutely rewarding.
Yeah. No, it's rewarding for sure, but just like you said, it's tough. Honestly, for most people, tough is almost an understatement. Like I don't want to lie to people or be dishonest. Taking the path of, like you said, delayed gratification can be very, very difficult. Like it's not that it's a super complicated thing. It's just tedious and it's difficult to over and over again push back your wants,
Sure.
because
It's kind of like, the lady that he mentioned in the story. I don't know if you remember. Uh, she had recently gone through a divorce, and she came over for. He likes to teach through games,
yeah, yep.
financial
I
games, and he says
just got done with it.
that she got annoyed at the game, said it wasn't teaching her anything, but really what the problem was, it was bringing out flaws in her that she didn't want to know were there.
Yeah, she was being forced to confront her own errors.
Right.
And that's the reason that's such a brilliant point that he made is because that's true of now, I mean, I have no proof of this statistic, but I'd say that 90% of people are that way,
Sure.
if
Sure.
not more. Not as a matter of fact, we all on occasion are that way. We don't all always want to hear that we're wrong or that we have some character flaw or whatever. So,
It's like the girl that has had relationship after relationship after relationship where she picks some loser to be her boyfriend, right?
mhm,
And one day, one of her girlfriends is honest with her. God forbid you be honest with your friends.
yeah,
No, but what is honest with her and confronts her one day and says, "Hey, you look, I'm not, you know, I'm your friend and I'm always there for you. But when are we going to start looking at this and saying that your decision making process may be part of the problem of you picking up all these loser boyfriends?" And see, and
yeah,
that's the thing. They don't like to hear that. What do you mean? And the same thing is with our financial. At some point, you have to take responsibility for all these failures you've been a part of. You
yeah.
know,
At first, and what I would want people to understand is at first taking responsibility, yeah, it's scary and it's very, very uncomfortable, but once you've done it a few times, it becomes a whole lot easier. And
it's the only way you're going to change. It's the only way you're going to
yeah,
grow is if you self reflect. What could I have done differently here that may have changed my situation?
yeah, and even though it's hard to see it immediately when you do it for the first time or first few times, it will make your life at least 10 times better if you can just learn to admit when you're wrong, uh, examine yourself and take a separate course of action from what you've been doing. I promise you, if your life if you do this and your life doesn't get better, let me know. Drop a comment or
I mean, and
something.
and and sometimes, yeah, I was gonna say sometimes it is uncomfortable. You get comfortable in, well, this is the way I did it last time. I know it didn't work, but I'm comfortable doing this. Well, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
This is where we get back to the definition of insanity, right?
Yep.
Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, that's good advice for every area of life. Generally, unless there's something that changes your situation that you weren't aware of, doing things the same way in the same situations brings the same result.
And by the way, examining yourself is God's way of teaching, or
Amen.
it's how God expects you to learn. And it's part of the reason why, in my opinion, that Jesus struggled so much on earth, and why he was persecuted is because getting, whether it's the Pharisees or other people, to examine themselves and see the faults within themselves. In many cases, some people would rather, you know, like you said, continue in their ways and destroy you as opposed to admit that they're wrong about something.
Well, we know from the story that the lady later apologized, uh, and actually it came from her friend. She didn't personally talk to Kiyosaki, but she found out through he found out through her friend that
But
she had had a change of heart
yep,
about that and realized that after some reflecting that he was right. But uh,
she took her
the
money
main
back too, and I'd be like, "All right, can I?" No, I'm just
that's right. No, but just to your point a minute ago, most people, rather than confronting the truth, would rather believe the lie.
yeah,
And that is what not only he tries to get people to confront. Jesus did the same thing, but the people would rather believe the lie than confront the truth, which honestly is just an asinine way of living.
yeah. I don't know. People just we have weird things that we do, like you just said right there. We will convince ourselves that the wrong way is the right way and be unwilling to hear anything else. And I don't even fully understand why we are that way. But
I'm
we
convinced
all do that at some point.
I'm convinced that it's just because even though we may know that it's the wrong way or it's not true, we continue to act as though it is because we want it to be that way,
Yeah, I mean, I
you
guess
know?
that's the main reason probably. Um, oh, and earlier, um, when we talked about Warren Buffett and corporations, the point that I was trying to bring up is another thing that Warren Buffett does that a lot of people don't think about with his investments is he invests in companies that are of similar size to his net worth. And what I mean by that is, since he's what I would call a centibillionaire, meaning that his net worth is in the hundreds of millions, or I mean hundreds of billions, centibillionaire, hundreds of billions of dollars. He invests in companies that are, hundreds of $1 billion, or now maybe even $1 trillion. The reason that's important is because as a smaller investor, and I know I'm not saying you won't make any money in something like Apple or Amazon as a small investor, but as a small investor, if you invest in something that is that much bigger than your net worth, your gains are going to be often much more minimal than if you found an opportunity that, let's say you have somebody that has a net worth of $100,000. Now, they could go buy shares of something like Nvidia that's worth $5 trillion or whatever. And they'd probably make a little money. Or that person with a net worth of $100,000, or even if we took it to $1 million, they could go and buy, like I was talking about the other day, a laundromat, a car wash, some rental properties. And more often than not, they are going to get a higher and safer return that way, and they are going to get it in a timely enough manner that they can take the proceeds from that and reinvest it into something else.
Sure.
Whereas, again, it's not that you won't make money in a much bigger company, but it's going to be, you know, best case scenario often is 10 to 20% annual return, which isn't bad. But when you invest in something closer to your size and it goes well, I mean, you can potentially return, uh, make double, triple, quadruple, sometimes even 10 to 20 times what your original investment was.
It's kinda how we talked about training your mind to think differently.
Mhm.
I think some people realize that they need to train themselves to think differently. Like, they realize, "Hey, get rich quick schemes don't work.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna go to this guy that I know he knows what he's doing, and expecting him to give you a get rich quick scheme.
Yeah.
Even though you just said, "I know they don't work," but I'm expecting him to give me something that's gonna get me rich overnight. See, it's easy to fall back into the way that you've always thought, and I'm even guilty of that sometimes in different aspects. You find yourself getting back into that rut of where you thought a certain way, and you have to be willing to realize that and get back to the right way, and it's hard, it is, but you have to that's what you have to gotta train yourself.
Yeah, it's the mindset shift, uh, to me is definitely the most difficult part of the whole process, and it's kinda hilarious and annoying how difficult it is because at the core, it's really simple. All you gotta do is stop thinking the wrong way and start thinking the right way, but, I mean, it took me.
But you've developed a habit.
Yeah, well, and it took me years to get out of the other mindset, and I mean, it's like I've said before, I was at 30,000 hours of doing this. Now I'm probably 35, maybe even 40,000 hours. I mean, it took me, I don't know, at least 3 to 5 years probably just to unbrainwash myself. I don't know another term or another better way to say it, but it took me years to have that shift in my mindset to understand what it is that I'm talking about now. Now, I mean, I may have had, even when I first started, a slight, uh, more of a natural inclination towards investment and economics, but I still had to have a major mindset shift, just like many others do, in order to become successful. And like you said earlier, a big part of it is just being able to examine yourself, look at yourself and saying, okay, what I'm doing right here is wrong. Admitting that you're wrong about something and pivoting to something uh that you aren't doing that's better, you know, is the
What do you
simple way.
y at the beginning of the book, I can't remember what the percentage is. Maybe you know off the top of your head. Just roundabout, what percentage of businesses fail? What was it?
Oh, it's a lot. I can't remember what the exact percentage
It's
is,
somewhere
but
around 80 or 90,
yeah,
right? I
it's
mean,
like
it's
80 to
way up there.
90%. Yeah.
So wouldn't it make sense? I'm just throwing this out there. Wouldn't it make sense to become a expert on shorting companies since the vast majority of them fail anyway?
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, I mean, there are plenty of people that make money doing that, but and I mean, I get your point on that potentially being a good way to go, but the reason, in my opinion, why that I hope that never becomes popular, and I don't think it ever should become really popular with the masses, is because that would create continual market conditions of the price of different companies just going down and down, and it would ultimately, if everybody was a short seller, then all public companies would die.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, people can make
Let me
money that way, but
I'm gonna shift, now to, what he talked about probably at the closer to the end of the talk today. Um, and I just wanna get your opinion on this because I may be looking at it wrong, but when he talked about corporations, companies, that kinda thing, I can see the benefit. I mean, because he talked about even being able to run a lot of your personal life, uh, through the aspect of a company, right?
yeah,
And you can benefit from legal things in a corporation or a company, uh, that benefit you monetarily in your everyday life. He talked about basically taking vacations, like to Hawaii, but if you do some business dealings there, you
it's a
write
board
that
meeting.
off as a business trip, right?
Yeah.
And my question is, my mind from a follower of Jesus standpoint, from a Christian standpoint, wants to know about the ethics of that. Um, are you really taking a business trip, or are you lying about a business trip so you can save money? Do you things like that to the normal person, I don't think are a concern, and I wonder, uh, when he talked about that in the book, I wondered, what about the morality of that?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just what is your opinion?
No, I mean, it's a valid point. If the only reason that you were really having or taking a trip or having a write off meeting like that is for the sake of saving money and you didn't, it was unnecessary, then in my opinion, yeah, you have done something that is immoral. Um, Now, if you have a legitimate need to go somewhere and have a meeting, then that's one thing. But yeah, I mean, there, you can't really argue that it's moral to just continually do something just because you can, you know?
Well, I mean, you know, like you said, the necessity. Like if I could have, I spent $10,000 that I'm going to write off on a trip to Hawaii. Okay, that I might could have taken care of this business uh, dealing in a 10-minute Zoom call. Okay. And I'm justifying my vacation by saying, "Yeah, we needed to get together to talk about this over in Oahu on the beach," you know?
But Chris, we've got a private jet that needs to be fueled up and taken out every now
Yeah,
and then.
yeah, we couldn't let it waste away. I mean, you gotta work it, you know?
Yeah. No, it's you're definitely right. You're spot on. And the other problem with this behavior is also part of the reason why the government. I really don't like talking about this because I don't want to empower the IRS or anybody else. But part of the reason the government struggles so much is because wealthy people are able to figure these things out, and the government spends all its time chasing its tail trying to figure out what rich people are doing, and they can never keep up. They're always behind.
Right,
Um,
right.
and here you have somebody like me who's still a pretty modest investor. You, you, I wish people could understand how frustrated even small investors like me get watching the government chase its tail in circles when we can clearly see that this massive corporation is writing off everything under the sun, you know. And I'm not trying to say that I think that uh big companies should have a heavier tax burden just because they're big. It's like I've said many times before, I think that we should just tax everybody the same. Is I mean, to me that is the only way to have anything resembling justice or fairness.
Sure. Well, there's at least a couple of guests that we've had on before, uh, that disagree with that opinion, and I couldn't understand it. We've
Yeah.
had we've had a guy who had a really good understanding of the inner workings of an investment
He
company.
disagreed with it too.
He disagreed with it as well, and what I don't understand is even if you're talking about a company, okay, fair is fair, right?
Mhm.
I probably have the attitude because I believe that we should reduce our tax burden by about 90%.
Yeah.
About 90% of the taxes we pay, we should not be paying.
Well, and I've said this again and again too, and I'm gonna keep saying it till I'm purple in the face. But what people fail to understand is, including government officials, if you did like you said and lowered, just taxed everybody 10% or whatever, lowered 90% of people's tax burdens. Initially, it sounds like, oh, you want us to make far less money, but what they don't understand is the more money that individual investors and companies accumulate, the more money that they're going to eventually pay back into the economy because even though that 10% rate sounds like a flat thing, unchanging, the more money you make, the more the greater that 10% cut becomes. So it still keeps going up without you having to, set the rate at 30%, 40%, whatever. Um, and I think that's what people fail to see for some reason. They just all they see is
And what I'm gonna say about this is just to your point, I just looked up and nearly 40% of all Americans ended up not having to pay any federal taxes.
mhm,
So if you took that 40% that did not pay anything, and now all of a sudden they have to pay 10%, that's a huge amount that you would be pulling in even though you reduced the top earners.
mhm.
And that like you said, I believe you would end up having more money to use than the way it currently is. I mean, is that right?
Oh yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. Eventually the government would take in more money from just the flat 10% as opposed to, having rates like we have now because individual investors and companies will be able to retain more of their earnings. Families will be able to, in many cases, retain more of their earnings, and they'll use those to invest and create new
Sure,
companies or expand current companies. And therefore, the more their wealth grows, 10% of $5 million is going to be more than 10% of $1 million.
sure,
So the more their wealth grows, the more the government's wealth is going to grow too.
sure.
It's just that now we've we've made it more fair on the people.
Right.
And isn't that what the United States is supposed to be about? Is
And what I can't understand is how anybody looks at a situation and says, "It's fair for this person to pay 50% of their income, and it's fair for this person to not owe anything," as opposed to, "This person makes $100,000,000. We're gonna tax him 10%, okay? This person makes $30,000. We're gonna tax him 10%." How is that not fair? I don't I have yet to have somebody justify to me that that's not fair.
because greed and envy, some most people, even and I'm not bashing anybody, but previous guests that I've had on, most of their opinions are pretty similar in that, well, the guy with $30,000, it affects him more severely because he has less money. And I would say I disagree. I mean, I see your point. Yeah, he has less money, and so it feels a little bit heavier. But just because it feels heavier doesn't mean that it is a heavier hit. If you have $100 million and you have to cough up $10 million, you're still coughing up a large portion of that $100 million that you made, and that you just you can't punish people for being successful. If you take away incentive for success, then what if all the successful people decided to just stop trying to make society better?
Sure, I mean, you look at it this way.
um
I would wager that it's and I know what people are saying, but I would wager still that the people are misunderstanding. Uh, for a person that makes $10,000 a year, okay, and they all of a sudden owe $100, okay, uh, or
or at
$1,000,
that, yeah, I was gonna say
thousand
it'd be a
dollars,
thousand.
$1,000. Um, I would wager that it is much easier for them to pay $1,000 and stomach it than it is for a person who makes 100,000,000 having to give 10,000,000
Yeah.
in taxes. Now, instead of that, you're gonna say, "Well, the guy who makes 10,000, he's not gonna owe anything. But the guy who makes 100,000,000, we're gonna make him pay 50,000,000."
Hmm.
Um, that is that's immoral.
Yeah.
That's immoral.
Well, and it's part of how we've gotten to where we are now, which is that, yeah, the poor and the middle class are so frustrated and confused as to why millionaires and billionaires are still able to avoid their taxes. Well, it's because you tried to overtax them and be unjust, and now they hire their armies of attorneys and accountants and convince them to put forth legislation to up the rates on you instead. And I
Right.
like I don't want to name him, but a specific left wing guest that I've had on before, he made that argument of no, the rich should pay more, and he makes that argument over and over again. And it's when you make that argument, you're chasing your tail in circles because unless you have something flat across the board, you leave room for attorneys and accountants to wiggle their way through a million different holes.
Percentages are
So,
fair. Percentage
yeah.
that's the reason that even in the Bible, uh, the percentage that was mandated that people bring to, the house of God was the same across the board because it was fair.
Hmm.
That 10% to somebody who made little was little. The 10% to somebody who made a lot was bigger.
Yeah.
I mean, a percentage is fair.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. To me, that is the only way to stop us from continuing down the path of building more and more national debt. Uh, other than, you have Trump trying to do his tariff thing, but eventually people both in our country and in other countries are going to get tired and frustrated from something like tariffs. And so like I saw something the other day where and I think it in the House GOP controlled,
Mhm.
they
House and the Senate, barely.
yeah, they voted or did something to either stop or lessen uh how much tariffs are going to Canada. So even his own party has been trying to claw back on some of that.
Mhm.
So, and the reason I make that point, I'm not saying that they can't be an effective tool, but typically they're not going to be very long enough lasting to make a huge impact because most people aren't going to have the stomach for the cause and effect or like what comes after the
And one
effect
of
that they
the
have on the economy.
as easy as some of these decisions seem to be, and I think that they are, if people would just sit down and rationally look at them like we're talking about a flat tax, the reason that those decisions are not made, people don't bite the bullet and do that, is because just like the market, politics is emotionally driven.
Hmm.
And if you can say, "Oh, this group of people is oppressed, we gotta save them," and they'll keep you in office, well, you make laws where, "Let's tax the rich."
Hmm.
And if that keeps them in office, well, hey, they're all for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the other problem. Oh, and before I forget, if you like the channel, you enjoy the content, please subscribe, uh, subscriptions help us out a lot. I think we're at like 51 and we need to be at 2,000. So we've got a ways to go. So we'd really appreciate if you sub, if you enjoy the content, leave us a comment, uh, but anyway, what were we talking about?
About
Flat.
being emotionally driven and how politics plays a role if you can stay in office by saying this group of people is oppressed,
Yeah.
we need to get the rich people's money, tax the rich, you know?
Yeah. It's, ultimately, yeah, that's ultimately what always causes the damage is either envy or greed. And the envy is,
Or the quest for power.
yeah, and the quest for power. But envy is seeing, what somebody else has and wanting what they have and being so frustrated that you can't get it that now all you want to do is damage and destroy, that individual or that business or whatever. Um, and they may not see it that way, but I mean, that's how it is. The only reason that you don't feel that people should pay the same, I mean, they'll make the argument of, like I said before, it's harder for that individual to pay that 10% since they're making so much less. But I mean, not if everybody is forced to have some discipline, when you really examine it, no, it's not more difficult because, whether you're making 10,000, you're being asked to pay 1,000, or you're making 30,000 and you've got to pay what, 3,000, or 100 million and 10 million. It's it's all the same percentage.
Sure.
Um and it's equal. It's To me, it's just as difficult for the guy with $100 million to cough up $10 million as it is for
Ab
30, the
absolutely.
$30,000 guy.
The hit, percentage-wise, is the same. It
Mhm.
it should the gut punch that you feel, regardless of what amount of money, you make, is the same when you do it by percentage. Um, I wager it's just as hard for the person who makes 100,000,000 to pay, 10,000,000 as it is for the person who makes, $100 to pay 10.
Yeah.
It's the same impact.
And what I really, really want people to understand is, if you don't do this, like I've said before, the only result is, well, now you've given the really wealthy even more power because they can afford really good attorneys and really good accountants that the guy that's making $30,000 can't afford all that. So, without the flat tax rate. So the guy with 30 only making $30,000 is typically going to end up paying more than the billionaire, because the billionaire can find a ton of expenses to write off and so on. And,
You
you
know,
know,
it would actually end up saving a lot of money. Now a lot of people, they may not like to run it this way. However, let's say, like, for instance, you own a company and you tax their income from the day they're hired, okay? At the end of the year, your employees don't even have to file taxes because you've already taken it out. All they gotta do is give it to the government.
hmm
Say I made, uh, uh, $100,000 this year, and I've taken 10 out of your salary. Well, I don't even have to file taxes. I just give it the company just gives it to the government. I'm done.
yeah, yeah. Another thing, going back to the book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, that we're covering is, he I think by this point he's mentioned corporations a couple of times, hadn't he?
Mhm.
Or he calls them the secret of the rich, even though they're not really a secret. Everybody knows about corporations. But what he doesn't tell you that corporations do, on top of allowing you to write things off, if you start a C corporation, no matter how much wealth you have, your initial tax bracket goes down automatically to 21%. Like, that's your top end, your cap. So if you have a guy with billions of dollars that would normally be in that 37 to 40% top end tax bracket, just by putting his wealth into a corporation, that automatically, just like that, takes his tax liability down to 21%. So just that alone is a huge advantage, because
Sure.
a normal person, take a doctor or a lawyer that's earning 150,000, 200,000, $300,000. They're they're making less than the billionaire, but they're paying that top end income tax bracket, whereas the billionaires
Just like he is.
paying the
Yeah.
21,
Mhm.
and that 21 is before he starts finding his expenses to write off. And he can write off what he pays his employees. He can write off, you know, a
You know,
million different things.
and what bothers me about that is, like, you'll have these people, like, on the liberal, media who will get on there and talk about, how greedy and how, uh, morally corrupt these people are, the billionaires, for doing this, when they're taking a legal deduction. It's legal. It's
hmm
not like they're doing something illegal. they're taking a legal deduction and they're talking about them like they're the scum of the earth. Like they're
Yeah.
stealing from these poor people by taking this deduction, you know?
Yeah. Well, when you can deflect it, and I don't get me wrong, the wealthy are doing this intentionally. So do they deserve some scrutiny? Yeah. But what you're talking about is, especially with politicians encourage and love to deflect all that on wealthy people, because then the scrutiny doesn't come to them, when really and truly the scrutiny should be going to bureaucrats and the politicians, because they are the ones that have the power to enact the legislation that allows the wealthy to do what they do. So
Mhm.
they and they understand that. They know what's going on, especially once they've been in office for a while. It's just that they know, hey, the more I deflect onto other things and other people, distract the people with other stories, news stories. I mean, this is how these people have behaved since ancient times. I mean, you go back to Rome and the Colosseum. The whole reason the Colosseum was built and they had gladiator events is to distract the public from
Sure,
other things,
sure,
entertain the public, and you know, they get, I don't know, soft.
sure. Speaking of, emotionally driven and the stock market, uh, what were you watching when I came in?
Uh, just then, or right before you came in, I think I was watching Squawk on the Street or something. It's CNBC.
Squawk Box?
Yeah, Squawk Box, something like that.
But what were they talking about?
Um, crypto was the discussion that they were
And
talking
the
about.
recent, absolutely astronomically huge fall of Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, yeah. I
I mean,
think,
it's lost almost half of its value.
yeah, I think it may have clawed back a little bit today. I'll have to look again, but it definitely,
Like, they were talking about it was a little over the $120,000 a share range, I don't know how long ago? I'm not really sure, not just a
it
short
got
time
all the way
ago,
up to 120. Huh?
120 something
Jeez.
thousand dollars for share, and now it's like, what, 69?
Yeah. And that's what a lot of people don't understand or appreciate, especially if you're a new investor. And don't get me wrong, to this day I would not call Bitcoin an investment, but do as you will. If you want to call it that, fine. But what you what you know as an experienced investor that you don't know as an inexperienced one is, anytime you have a meteoric and rapid rise, uh, what that signals is volatility, and volatility means that if something goes up really fast, it can also come down really fast.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it's, I nobody can say with 100% certainty what it's going to do in the future. It could continue to drop. It could go back to 100,000, but I at least want you to know that it is a very volatile thing. And yeah, you could buy it and be rewarded, and it could go higher, but you could also be burned really bad and it could go from 69,000 to 3,000,
Well, they talked about, and they had a specific number, I can't remember what it was, but there was a specific number that they mentioned on the report of millionaires just a few short weeks ago that are no longer millionaires, but
Yeah.
because of this drop. Um, it is interesting to say the least. Uh, when you're talking about a stock that big that all of a sudden, and they talked about it being
Currency.
because there was a, yeah, well, I'm sorry, but
Nah,
because there was a large sell off was the
yeah.
reason that the price fell.
Yeah, and the reason I say that isn't to just like mess with you or whatever. The reason I jump in with something like that is because this is another mindset thing, and part of the reason why people often choose to buy into things like these is because they view them as a stock or an investment,
Mhm.
when in fact that's not what you're buying. You're buying an electronic digital currency.
Sure.
So you have currencies, commodities, and then you have in true investments, which are businesses and property. Um, you can buy things like commodities and currencies and speculate on if they're going to go up or down, and you can make money that way. You can do that with things like oil. Um, people trade oil futures and um, you know, gold and silver. You can speculate on paper trades as to what the futures are going to do with gold and silver. You can make money that way, but the reason that I'm not a huge crypto fan like a lot of other people are is because when you're an experienced investor, you understand that um what do you remember what Robert Kiyosaki, what he referred to as a true asset? Or he said something along the lines of he called them income generating or
Right,
income
right, right,
producing.
right.
And so the reason businesses fit that criteria and something like Bitcoin doesn't is because when you invest in a stock, like let's just take McDonald's, for example, you're investing in a company that has employees, takes orders, brings in money, and then kicks out some of that money in the form of dividend back to its shareholders. So you have both the chance for price appreciation and the value of the company, thereby making the stock go up along with more buyers than sellers. So you can make money that way. But
Well,
you,
Kevin, to me, what's so tempting about these things is I even looked at and I invested in some cryptocurrency that's now defunct, of course. If I invest in something, it's going to fail. But
hey, a lot of you'd be surprised how many people feel that way, and sometimes it's not just you. Everybody has that feeling at
but
some
the
point.
thing is that it's so tempting because when you see the potential of I can invest $100 in this penny stock that right now it shows in the stock market a 0.00000 and then some numbers in value.
Mhm.
And if this worth even goes up to a penny, I'm a millionaire.
Yep.
If it goes up to a penny because of the money that I've invested, I'm a millionaire. That's extremely tempting. You understand
Mhm.
how that could be very tempting to invest in.
Oh, absolutely. But my question for people think that way is why do you think that way about a currency and not think that way about a stock or a business? You just use the term penny stock. Penny stock is a term that was created to discourage people from taking the smaller and more rewarding opportunities because you have all these financial experts and gurus that'll say, well, it's much more risky. And yeah, it's risky if you don't know what you're doing, but if you find a good opportunity and you pass on it just because it's a penny stock, and by the way, the correct term for these things, and again, I hope you don't think I'm trying to bash you out. What I'm trying to do is change mindsets. Um because people like me, as opposed to calling something a penny stock, I would call that a micro cap company or a small cap company.
Mhm.
And that's the reason I bring this up and I emphasize the importance is just because this is just another mindset shift.
Mhm.
It is what it is, and you can call it a penny stock, but if you call it a micro cap company or a small cap company, it switches your mind from thinking this is automatically a bad thing to this has potential. I just need to see, excuse me. Ooh, cough. Um, it changes your mindset in that now when you man, let me get some water.
You good, man. Now, I honestly think that, when you get into these terms, like you said, uh, many people want you to think a certain way, especially, uh, the financial advisors want you to think a certain way because it's more beneficial to them. It's kinda like, uh, when you go to, a car dealership and they're selling new cars. Well, guess what they're gonna talk down? They're gonna talk down used cars
Mhm.
because they want you to buy a new one. I mean, just what you said, I think is a good point also to consider.
Yeah. And funny thing about that, when I was selling cars for a little while, it I don't know that it's like this at every dealership, but for us, it became much more lucrative to sell used vehicles as
Right.
opposed to new because I don't bigger margin.
Sure.
On a new car, there's only so much money that you can make unless you somehow convince that buyer to purchase the vehicle for way more than it's worth.
Well,
But
and it's all a matter of the way you, communicate things, the way you talk about things. To the seller who's gonna trade his car in, they're gonna start finding everything wrong with the vehicle to tell you why they're lowering the price of it. "I'm only gonna give you $5,000 for this because I gotta do this, 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 and this." And then the person that comes in and wants to buy it, they're gonna tell you how good it is and all the benefits of it and why they're charging you 15 for it, even though they only paid 5. I mean, it's all a game. It's a shell game, you know?
yeah, yeah, I mean, it's
And I
perspective.
think it's the same way with investments as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I always laugh when I hear somebody call something a shell company or whatever because ultimately every company is a shell company. The only reason companies and corporations are created is to hide themselves from lawsuits and liability from the public, hide themselves from potential tax liability.
Sure.
Even all these legal entities, they are all created for that purpose.
Right.
So technically speaking, the guy that's doing illegal things and hiding his assets in the Cayman Islands or whatever, or Swiss bank accounts back in the day, he's really not doing, from a technical standpoint, he's not doing a lot different from the guy with the corporation. It's just that the guy with the corporation is legally recognized and is legally doing that, and the criminal is doing it illegally, and so therefore he's a criminal.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
you know, the criminal's dealing in cocaine and selling cocaine, but the legal guy owns Coca-Cola, and so therefore it's okay.
For instance, and I think we've talked about this on the show before, how many normal, average, everyday people would be arrested for insider trading on some things, yet a politician can do it, nobody bats an eye?
Hmm. Yep. That goes back to what I was saying a minute ago when it comes to deflection and distraction. They don't want you to think that way. But and here's the other thing too. A lot of people see these injustices, but you know, none of us do anything, and so it continues. The only way that you change these bad behaviors by politicians and others in power is if you do something about it. And so far, none of us, including me, have done anything about it. So,
You know, what's funny is it's just another example. You know, back when, Obamacare was a thing and it was a mandate, it no longer is. That part of it, no, the health insurance mandate no longer is. But back when it was, there was a special stipulation in the bill that said that mandate did not apply to Congress. I mean, you think about that. We're gonna mandate you must have this insurance. It doesn't apply to us, but you have to have it. I mean, it's just another example of, rules for thee, but not for me, you
yeah,
know?
I'm glad you bring up insurance too, because this will take us back to Warren Buffett for a second. One of the I don't know if it's the first thing that really caused him to start accumulating wealth much faster, but I know that one of his most successful investments was an insurance company. That's one of the reasons to why he became a billionaire is his investment in an insurance company. And if I'm not mistaken, that company is Geico. So he,
Interesting. Hey, when you think about it, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is just this observations I make when we start talking about investments and different companies, that kinda thing. And again, I'm not please don't misunderstand me. I'm not downplaying or talking bad about people who, uh, use a hedge like insurance. I'm not. In most instances, it's probably a good investment. But you understand that at the end of the day, a company is profiting off of your fear. That's what they're doing. They're
Yep.
profiting off of your fear about something that may happen in the future, and they're saying, "Hey, I'll take care of that. Give me some money, and I'll take care of it if something happens."
Yeah, to me, the funniest and also sort of enraging insurance commercials that I see, I won't name the company, but you know the guy that's always causing people to get into accidents?
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
that to
Yeah.
me, that is the perfect example of what all insurance
Sure,
is,
sure.
hey, you know,
You don't
you
wanna be caught with your pants down. You
yeah,
gotta make sure that you invest with us.
your car's fine right now, but not if I swing a bat through it.
Right,
You
right.
better buy to me, that's no
And you'll be
different.
left holding the bag for this if you don't buy insurance with us.
To me, that's no different than somebody in the mafia back in the day saying, "Hey, you need some protection for your business.
Perfect
See
example.
what happens if you don't get protection. Your windows get bashed in."
Perfect
And
example.
I mean, that's what they're doing. They're running a protection racket. I mean,
That's right.
legally.
That's right.
Um, and I'm not gonna defend. I'll go back to the whole Luigi Mangione thing. I'm not gonna defend the guy. He killed somebody, killed a family man. But the concern against big insurance, even though what he did is wrong, the concern against big insurance is it's a valid concern. Um,
Sure. I one of the things and we've also talked about this on the show before as well, but one of the things that I don't like, and it's hard to figure out what is the right thing to do in this because I don't wanna limit freedom, okay? But when you have these insurance companies that donate to campaigns on both sides, not one side, they're gonna give the Republicans and Democrats. They're legally bribing a public official to make decisions that benefit them. It's a legal bribe, that's what it is. And, you know, when they make decisions that they give to both sides. So they'll say, "You have to buy this company's product." What is that?
what are the first two things that they ask for when you get pulled over?
Your license and registration, yeah.
Well, let's make it three: license, registration, and
Proof of
what?
insurance.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Because
and
that's now a mandate. That's
and
right.
nobody thinks about it when they ask for that, but all that is somebody's business decision of, hey, you know what? We need to sell more of our insurance products. Let's go take this politician out to a real nice dinner. Let's get him $100 steak and
You know,
bottomless drinks.
one of the
You
things that
know,
I didn't like, the reason that the Supreme Court was able to make Obamacare a mandate is because they said, his side argued that we're just gonna call this a tax. You can implement taxes and that's okay. You can't say people have to buy insurance, so we'll call it a tax. Well, realistically, in all honesty, they were being truthful.
mhm.
When you mandate that somebody has to pay something, that's a tax,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep. It's now you're starting to see why insurance frustrates me so much. It's not the business itself, it's the fact that they have mandated that at least automobile insurance, and they make it feel the same way with even health insurance and now life insurance. They make people feel like these are not optional things. And when it comes to auto insurance, it's not optional. If you don't have it, you get pulled over without auto insurance and you suffer at least severe potential fines, and you might can even that might there might even be jail time for not having insurance. I don't know, but it's such a ridiculous thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, I get the point of if you have a bunch of motorists driving around that, crash into another person. Well, what if they don't have the money or the insurance to cover that? I get what you're saying there, but what I want you to know is several hundred years ago when people were riding around on horseback, they didn't have to have insurance. So,
Amen.
you know, we, the most successful businesses that exist now convince people that their services and or products are a need and not a want. But in my opinion, and you can argue with me all you want to, insurance is not a need. It's not something that you should be forced to pay for. And if you, let's say you're a person that has life insurance, auto insurance, health insurance, if you were to take away all three of those things, I guarantee you each of your paychecks would gain, let's say per 2 week pay period, your paycheck would see at least a two, three, $400 improvement per pay period. So that could potentially be, $300 on one paycheck or $600 more a month that you're now retaining in earnings.
Well, one of the things that I looked up
Uh,
is, at least the figures that I looked up show that around 70% of all policyholders, uh, never cost the insurance company. In fact, meaning that they profit off of around 70% of all their policyholders. Now, they
yep.
make up for that even by having deductibles and these other things that offset
hmm
that cost. So realistically, they profit off of every customer.
Yep. Yep. Like you said, the vast majority of people aren't ever going to need them, but they don't want you thinking that way. They want you thinking that.
And they end up at the end of the day that if they had paid for this damage, whatever damage it is, whether it be health, whether it be property, they paid more to the insurance company than they would for the actual damage
hmm
over the long haul.
Yeah. And here's the other kicker that makes it such a good investment, but such a hated thing is that even if they have to pay you out, like not too long ago, I threatened my insurance company with a lawsuit and forced them to pay out to help with my roof. And guess what happened soon after? My payments went up.
That's right.
So even if they get forced to pay out an amount for you, they're gonna be like, well, now we got to increase our rates.
And
Yeah.
guess what? Guess what those insurance companies also get to do? If if I have a customer that ends up costing me money, I get to write that off on my
hmm
taxes at the end of the year. So even if they did cost me a little bit, it benefits me at the end in taxes.
Yeah. Yep. Benefits them on taxes. They can raise their prices, and it just.
Not only that, Kevin, if you had cost the company $1 million by suing them, guess what else? Not only your rates go up, everybody else's is going to go up as well. And they
Yeah.
and they have Kevin to thank for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. Why'd you got man? And I'd take $1 million too. No, that's part of the problem is we're such a lawsuit happy society that all people are thinking about is the bag, the money bag that they can get, but they don't think
Because
about the implications
in
that you
all
just said
honesty,
right
I
there.
experienced that recently, about just after I moved into the neighborhood that I moved into about 2.5 years ago now. There were back to back, probably about 3 months in a row, and we hardly ever have it here, but about 3 months in a row, we had some significant hail, one day, about 3 months in a row. So, a bunch of houses around me, I wasn't one of them, but a bunch of houses around me had to have their roofs replaced because of damage
Just from the hell?
from hail,
Jeez.
and, my rates actually went up, and when I questioned that, it was because of the hail damage, roof repairs that had to be done in my area. I'm like, "I didn't have to replace mine, but I'm having to pay extra because somebody else had roof damage," and it's all a shell game. It's all they can claim whatever they wanna claim, uh, is the reason, and they just and across and not only that, but because they had to raise their rates, all the other insurance companies raised their rates as well.
What I what I'm another thing I want people to understand is, and this tells you more about insurance companies too. When I was studying investing the most and spending the most hours per day studying investing and financial related topics, I wanted nothing more than to start my own insurance company because when I looked at all the dynamics, I was like, It's that greedy mindset of it's like taking candy from a baby.
They're not going to lose money.
No,
It's like
you have
being
so many protections.
a casino. The house
Hmm.
is going to win. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter. They lose, they win.
yeah. But when I was at my most greedy place when I was studying some of this stuff, all I could think about was investing in and or trying to start my own insurance company. So
Interesting.
that tells you that should be, I don't know, illuminating, or I
Sure.
mean that should show you something.
Well, the thing is, just like we talked about before, from a Christian standpoint, we depend on God for our success, our ultimate success, and whatever else happens to us, we trust that He's doing everything and working it all together for our good, like the Bible says. But we do want to make good decisions and not put ourselves in a bind when we could have made better decisions that that change our perspective on things, that change our uh, the way that we're living our lives, uh, just by making those good decisions.
Hmm. Yep. And you know, you don't hear a lot of business people and investors speak about the Bible much and about Jesus much, but if you don't understand God, you don't read your Bible, you don't know about Jesus, you're not gonna do well. Well, I'm not gonna say you're not gonna do well in business, but you're not going to understand the side when it comes to justice and fairness and you know the true attempt at equality and so on. You're not gonna fully understand those things without uh reading your Bible and without um accepting Jesus as your Lord. Um you there are plenty of millionaires and billionaires, I'm sure, that are atheist or whatever, but you the ethics conversations a- and the decisions that you make when it comes to ethics, those cannot be found in human form. The only way that you're going to fully understand those is by understanding God, in my opinion. But
Well, look at it this way, and there really is no way. People hate when you bring up this argument, but it really is a valid one. If you are not getting your base of truth from the Bible, where are you getting it from?
hmm.
You have to have a place that you start from. And that's the reason that we have to have investigators and all this kind of stuff for the IRS, because what happens? People who have no basis, have no morals, they get their own sense of morality from themselves. Well, what if they say, well, if I can if I not legally, but if I can hide some income some way, that keeps me from it keeps it from costing me money. Well, that's an immoral decision. A Christian or someone who follows, Jesus is not going to do that.
Yeah,
A person who has no basis for their morality may say, I think it's okay to steal from the government. I think it's okay." So, that's the reason you have to have a basis for your morality, or we devolve into a country that has no morals.
yeah. If everybody had no morals, the closest modern example that I could think of what society would look like is if you go back to either the Vikings or feudal Japan or feudal Europe. I mean, if think about like the dark ages or the medieval times where any peasant or anybody had to worry about whether it be an army or just a band of brigands, which are outlaws. There was a time where people didn't know any one day if their house would be raided by either an enemy army or just a band of
You're
outlaws.
right.
So I mean that's the sort of thing that happens when society devolves into just mass unethical behaviors.
Yeah, if you have no basis or sense of morality, everything devolves into might makes right.
Mhm.
Every time, whoever has the might
Yep.
is going to be in control, and they can make the decisions. If I want to come take your wealth, I'll just come take it.
Mhm. And I mean, that part about might, uh, is true, unfortunately, even in good times, that's true because since the world and humanity is imperfect, uh, you know, that's just sort of how it works down here on planet Earth is the person with the biggest army, the most nuclear weapon, which what did we just do? We just went into Venezuela and took the president and I mean that's because we are a mighty nation. We have a lot of military power. Who knows how many nuclear weapons we have.
And you know what? One of the things that you know I like to watch and listen to now, and I don't agree with the way he handles everything. You know Andrew Wilson?
uh I think is he a comedian?
No, no, no. He's a guy who does a lot of debate. Dark-headed guy, has a beard, and he does a lot of debate with feminists, that kind of thing.
I'm sure if I saw him, I'd know him. But
Yeah, but one of the arguments he makes, which is an extremely valid argument if you think about it, he asks women a lot of times when he gets in a debate with him, where do uh, where
does he talk with uh like women that are on OnlyFans and stuff like that?
does that? He
Yeah,
talks.
I know
He's
who
on
you're
Piers
talking about.
Morgan's show all the
I know who you're
time.
talking about.
Uh, he's on Joe Rogan all the time. Uh, uh, where do women's rights come from? How do they obtain them? And he makes the argument that uh, men are the ones who makes women's rights possible,
Mhm.
and they just scoff and they'll wag their head and they'll say, "I can't
Yeah.
believe you." But he said, and the argument he makes is a law is only as good as its enforcement, right? And
Mhm.
that's the truth. Who enforces the laws that women have rights? Well, men do. And they ask, well, how why do you say that? How is that? How is that the case? And he says, which is actually a valid argument, the rights that you have are only good if men allow you to have them, because men, if they wanted to, as a collective, could come take your rights, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Mhm. And
And which is the truth. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, you're good. I was just gonna say, yeah, you one of the popular arguments now, or that seems to be popular in my opinion with women is especially very far left leaning women is they'll say things like bring down the patriarchy. Have you heard
Yeah,
that
yeah,
before?
sure.
But like you just said, the reason that's hilarious to me is because if you know God, then you understand that men and women, no matter how much it irritates you and how much you want to deny it, we are made for different purposes and we have different features and traits,
Different roles.
different roles, and that can frustrate you, and that's fine. But I mean, that's the way that God designed us. So you're being frustrated at something that you're not ever going to be able to change, because that's how we were made. Um, and you know, I think part of the problem is a lot of women let themselves be convinced that that makes them less than a man, that they can't sometimes fulfill the same roles, but it doesn't make you less. It just means that you compliment a man with certain things and a man compliments you with certain things. You have some things that we don't have, and we have some things that you don't have. And we are meant to complement one another, not to
And
attack each other. You know?
one of the reasons that women realistically are more oppressed today is that they have taken on the roles that uh, should be handled by men.
Mhm.
And that's one of the reasons that women are actually oppressed today is because men have allowed them to take on roles that are not theirs.
Well, here's the other way to think about it too. Take it back to economics is two household incomes are better than one, right?
Sure.
Two household incomes mean, oh hey, now that family has 100,000 disposable income to spend on potential products and services. Whereas when just the man was working, it was $50,000, you know? So there are a lot of people that have theorized that uh, that corporate America was responsible for that because you know people are always blaming folks like Rothschild and who's the big oil tycoon? Um,
Rockefeller.
yeah, Rockefeller. Folks blame some of those people for turning us into a society where both men and women strive to have a career and have an income. And I don't get me wrong, I understand why some women feel um what's the word I'm looking for? They feel, I don't know, impoverished with
Oppressed.
or yeah, oppressed. They feel oppressed without being able to get a job and get an income, but um, it I don't know. They're
They also don't like to be honest about things because I've seen many arguments or debates on things like the 70% myth that women make 70% of what men do, which in the big scheme of things, in in reality, is that true? Well,
in a lot of instances, no, in
and
my
it's
opinion.
not. And if you look at the reasoning behind that, which they don't like to talk about, is that by and large, men are willing to work longer hours. They're willing to work tougher, harder jobs. They're willing, across the board to work more overtime. Uh, but women like to take the totals of those and then compare them. Well, that's not a fair comparison. They don't, you know, when they do things like take off for pregnancy,
Maternity leave.
paternity leave, they don't like to count that as part of the total. They just say, "Oh, well, I'm not making as much as a man." Well, of course, and rightfully so, because I'm not gonna pay you to stay at home.
Another example of that too is teachers. Teachers are very often paid less and are always complaining about pay. And sometimes they have valid concerns. I'm not saying they don't, but um, you know,
And you have
most
at
teachers
least
have 2 months off for summer,
and
so
you have
that's
at least 1 holiday a month
yeah.
off and 2 months in the summer, and, uh, then complain that you're not making as much as the guy down the road who works 40 hours or 50 hours a week every single week of the year.
Yeah, and with these recent raises in Mississippi, if they break it down, and granted, I'm sure Mississippi's still one of the lower paid when it comes to teachers, probably, but if they break it down into how many hours they actually work versus how much time they're off, I think that they would see that they are compensated pretty fairly, more fairly than they think. Could there be improvement? Yeah, but I think that many of them are paid more than they think they are.
Well, you also have to look at it from a standpoint of, what product are we producing? Okay, sure, we're teaching our kids. I get that, and that's a good investment. However, we're not generating profit, are we? Teachers don't generate profit. They're providing a service, but they don't generate profit.
Hmm.
So then you're left to, what does it cost to live in your area?
Yeah.
They get an income that is directly, most of the time, proportional to the area where they live. Are teachers in California going to make more money? Well, of course they are. It costs them more to live there than it does
Hmm.
in Mississippi.
And along with what you're saying there, and don't get me wrong, some of this frustrates me just like it does anybody else. What you're talking about there of generating a profit from something, equally frustrating to me is the fact that you can have, I forget what her name was. I saw an article the other day where this former child star decided to go and start an OnlyFans account,
Yeah.
and within the first day made $2 million, um, like 18 or 19 years old, which goes on to further solidify all the Epstein stuff and so on. Obviously, there's a lot of demand for that for her to be able to go and start that account and make $2 million. But you have the dilemma of that's, by our standards, highly unethical. But you know,
And
they
how
they got wealthy doing that.
that's right, and how unethical are the people who are buying the product?
Yeah. No, they I mean,
I mean, there it's not just her. It's the
yeah.
millions of other people that are willing to pay for that
Yeah,
product.
there's demand. That's the whole thing is like you said, very seldom do people blame the consumers and the demand, but just like drugs, if there's not demand for the product, it goes away.
Sure.
But because
It is not taking personal responsibility. Uh, again, are the cartels evil? Sure they are. Are the people who sell drugs to addicts, horrible, evil people? They are.
mhm,
Let's talk about the consumer. Let's be honest about that. Uh, did they put themselves in this spot? You bet they did. They had a choice.
yeah. Have you have you ever seen the movie Sicaria?
I have not.
The reason I ask is there's a scene in there that really got my attention when I saw it for the first time because I was like, oh man, he's unfortunately kind of right about that. I think his name's Matt Brolin, the actor. Matt Brolin's character,
Is it Josh?
or Josh Brolin,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry, Josh Brolin. At some point, they're raiding this cartel tunnel, and he comes back out, and there's an FBI agent that's attached to him because they're CIA operating within U.S. borders, so they have to have a domestic agency attached. Anyway, they get done clearing out the cartel tunnel, and she sees some things that she wasn't supposed to see, and so she goes up and punches him and gets in a fight with him. And then they grab her and slam her to the ground, and he says something along the lines of, "Until people stop taking and snorting this crap," he said something besides
Yeah.
crap, but
Yeah.
um, order and control is the best that we can hope for. And I was like, what he was saying there is we're not trying to stop this altogether because we know that people are going to buy these illegal products. We're just trying to do damage control. But I mean, when you hear that, you're like disgusted,
Which is why
because he's
nearly
right. He's right on one hand, but on the other hand, you're like, how do we stop people from demanding these things?
which is why nearly every state now has a marijuana dispensary.
Yeah.
They're trying to listen, when the government quits fighting you and says, "Hey, let's just tax this,"
Hmm.
they have given up. They've effectively given up.
Yeah. Lottery is another example.
Yeah.
By and large, for many generations, whether I don't know that there's a specific example in the Bible about gambling, but for the longest time, people preached against it, against casinos, against the lottery. And now, here we are in 2026 and you can gamble on just about, just
Sure.
about anything you want to.
Sure.
But, and I'm not going to sit here and argue ethics on that because like I said, I don't know that there's a clear example in the Bible, but me personally, I prefer to stay away from it. I feel like you're just sort of giving in to your greed and you're hoping that you're gonna win something when your chances are generally pretty low.
Sure.
Um, but anyway, yeah, that movie and that quote has stuck with me ever since I saw that.
I know we're getting pretty late here. I know we probably gotta go, but I wanna challenge you with something. If you have you ever seen the movie Margin Call?
Uh, I don't know if I've seen that one,
I
so
want
I'll
you,
have to
if
check
you
that one out.
would, sometime this week to watch that.
Margin
I
call.
think that it would be I think it'd be very interesting to you, and also
I've seen The Big Short. Have you seen The Big Short?
I have not. I've seen a few clips from it.
After what you were talking about earlier, you'd probably be much more interested in that movie now.
I probably would.
That's one of the most famous and big examples in recent history of somebody wanting to make money and did make money from shorting
Sure.
something.
Um,
Yeah.
I think probably more so. I mean, because a lot of the time I was confused. I could tell by the dramatic acting that was in it, what was coming up and what was happening, but I didn't understand it. I think that somebody like you that probably has a little more insight into the financial side of things would understand what was going on better than I did. But uh, it kinda has the same feeling, I think, of what uh, of the movie you were talking about, but, Kevin Spacey is in it, uh, some other yeah, what's his name? Jeffrey Lyne
Mhm.
is in it. I think that I think it'd be interesting to you.
So, yeah, tell me the name one more
Margin
time.
Call?
Margin Call. Yeah, I know I've seen it and heard of it. I just haven't watched it, so, yeah, I'll have to check that one out.
Um, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, let's see, we're at an hour 40, so, um, got anything else you wanna mention?
I
I
I
don't
I think I'm pretty good right now.
yeah, I c I know that there's been some news events going on, but most of it has already been covered, so there's a few new things there, like with Pam Bondi, they're interviewing her and just they're grilling her about Epstein related things, so we'll see what else comes of that. Um, and again, when it comes to immoral things and bad things, I don't care what party you are. I don't blame people for wanting to look into those things and find out more about those things. So
Amen.
we'll see what happens there. And yeah, if everybody were to be implicated of that, then you'll have some people saying, "Well, you can't just have everybody leave office." And I would say, "Why not?"
That's right.
If you don't eventually start doing something about unethical behavior and corruption, then how can you expect anything to ever change for the better?
Yeah, what's
It's
the
gotta
left so famous for saying? Silence is just being complicit.
Mhm, yep. But yeah, I guess that's about all I've got for today. So appreciate you guys tuning in, and like I said before, helps us out a lot if you subscribe. Subscriptions are the most helpful. Comments and likes are helpful too. But we've got that 2,000 mark that we'd like to reach to get closer to monetization. So uh, we appreciate you. But yeah, thanks for being here, Chris. We'll see you next time.
Man, thank you.